We now go to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank all of the witnesses, not just for being here today, but for your service in relation to the panels that you recently filed reports with. Look, Admiral, I don't know, I don't pretend, at least as a member here, to know better about what could have been done than somebody who served in the military and as long and distinguished a career as you did. And no matter how many bases I visit, I don't think I'll pretend that I have more knowledge or experience or ability than you do. So I'm going to accept your word, not once, but twice, all of the possibilities that were there and found, and came to a conclusion that everything that could be done would be done. I think it's important for the families to know that. We shouldn't be surprised that some people in the public are confused, because there have been misstatements plastered all over the place on TV and not retracted even when they're shown to be absolutely wrong. So there would be some confusion out there on that basis. But the Chairman's staff report that was released earlier this week concluded that the ARB's independence was undermined and that board members had actual and perceived, and I put that in quotes, conflicts of interest. Admiral Mullen and Ambassador Pickering, that's a very serious charge. Challenges the integrity of the unanimous report, but also challenges fundamentally your own integrity. And I want to give you each an opportunity to respond to those allegations. But first, I want to again acknowledge that you both served our nation for decades in some of the most senior positions in your fields. You've served Republican and Democratic presidents alike, and you've won so many awards and promotions, respectively, that if I listed them all here, it would eat up the rest of my time. You agreed to volunteer months of your time to serve on this ARB. So Admiral Mullen and Ambassador Pickering, can each of you explain why you agreed to serve on the board?
As the ranking minority member made clear, and as my testimony and my deposition, which is available to everybody, made clear, I served first because the Secretary of State asked me to take on a tough job. And I'd been doing that for my life, and my sense of service to my country said this is not something that I should turn down anyway, anyhow. Secondly, I made it very clear that Chris Stevens gave me 2 years of help and service as Undersecretary of State, and I had a personal debt of honor to Chris to take this on. Thirdly, I felt very strongly that we needed quickly to know what went wrong and then how to fix it, and that was the function of the ARB, and I believe we carried out to the best of our ability that particular function. Finally, I had no sense anywhere that there was any conflict of interest. I spent 42 years in the State Department. I knew many of the officers concerned. I have to tell you, full, fair, and free, this was not an exercise in any personal sense of debt or obligation to any of those people. And I believe that the comments on the report, that it was hard-hitting, that it called the shots the way it should have, in my view, is the best summation of what we tried to do, free of political influence, free of conflict, and I'm proud of the report, sir.
I was served, first of all, because I was asked to do it, Mr. Tierney. Secondly, we lost 4 great Americans that night. I have, certainly in the last 10 years or so, been with so many of those in uniform as well as those who serve in the State Department around the world in some very, very difficult posts. And I thought I could, certainly with my experience, contribute from the professional standpoint, and particularly from the military perspective, on what happened that night, and wanted to be able to do that. At its core, it's still who I am, which is a servant of this country, and when asked to go do that, it was pretty easy to say yes.
Thank you. You know, the ARB staff comments were made by the Republican staff report. They said, and I quote, "Undersecretary for Management Patrick Kennedy supervised the selection of the Benghazi ARB staff. This placed the staff in a position in which their duties required them to evaluate the performance of supervisors, colleagues, and friends." Close quote. Ambassador Pickering, how do you respond to the notion that the selection of staff created inappropriate conflict of interest?
My understanding of the role of Secretary Kennedy was that he made clear he did not participate. There seemed to have been an error somewhere, and that testimony, I think, is now in the minority report. I think, secondly, my judgment of the staff performance was that I saw no hint of any favoritism or preference. I saw a staff that worked many extra hours, that looked very carefully at all the issues, that did extraordinary research for us, was highly responsible to us, But in every case, Mr. Tierney, we all reviewed the final report many times. We each made contributions, and the unanimous view of this five-member panel is they took full responsibility and approved every word of that report.
Ambassador, then the chairman's report also raises questions about your recommendation of board member Catherine Bertini. Do you in any way believe that your recommendations of Catherine Bertini created a conflict of interest, and can you explain who she is and why you recommended her as a board member?
No, I was asked in the course of an early discussion who I thought might usefully serve on the board from outside the State Department. And I gave a list of names to Undersecretary Kennedy, who was accumulating those for Secretary Clinton. Large number of the people that I put on the list were not selected. Catherine Bertini was selected. She had, in my view, an outstanding reputation. She ran the World Food Program, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise of the UN. She was Undersecretary General of the UN for Management. She has a distinguished record as a professor of public policy. And I knew, in fact, that her own political background was on the opposite side to the party in power.
Thank you, sir. Yield back.